And this, for example, is an example of an exclusively Jamaican product made from our own Jippy Jappa here in Jamaica. Thank you, Ewan. Okay. There are also a number of ministries in Jamaica which focus, and they state this in their plans, on the creative industries. But as we were reminded yesterday, the focus is not always united. And in some ministries, it focuses on the creator. In others, it focuses on the economy. And so it's a diverse thing. But the core ministries that articulate a creative force are the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment, the Ministry of Culture. We do have a Ministry of Culture. And yesterday we had the Principal Director of Culture. She was our moderator. And the Ministry of Science, Technology, Energy and Mining. However, this doesn't negative the work of other ministries and agencies of the government which focus on the subject matter but may use a different nomenclature. One ministry which I must mention is the Ministry of Finance and Planning, under which a new agency, the Jamaica Customs has now been made into an executive agency, and they fall under the Ministry of Finance. And they're a critical agency, the customs, to the creative sector, because they facilitate the importation of tools of trade for musicians. And so we work very closely with Jamaica Customs at WIPO. Okay, the national goal articulated in the policy states that Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their fullest potential, and the outcome, and this is critical, the outcome that is expected from this goal is authentic and transformational culture. So in our Vision 2030, we recognize the importance of culture in the development of our society. We're focusing on what is innate to us and what can make us grow. The message basically is to recognize our fullest potential. We need to address and hone our natural skills and abilities, which is further articulated in the national goal of a Jamaican economy that is prosperous, and the prosperity arises from, among other things, internationally competitive industry structures. Now you may want to know, what are these structures? So we revert to agriculture, but we're not going to agriculture in the usual way. What does this have to do with creativity? What does agriculture have to do with creativity? And I would say two words, and it's something that we eat. One, jerk, two, patties. If you've been anywhere in the world, and if you watch the cooking channels, jerk belongs to everybody, but jerk is ours, eh? Yes? It is. Okay, and we've got our patties, and you may be saying to yourself, jerk from the soil, and then you're convinced now that my presentation has been tampered with. For what does a patty have to do with the soil? But I'll tell you, it's not the meat, the fish, the fowl, or the vegetables that we jerk or that we put in the patty that keep people coming back for more. It is the seasonings, okay? The love that goes into the making of the good and the products of the soil. The thyme and the pimento, to name just two of the ingredients that are common to jerk and to patties. And if you're a Jamaican, you swear by the St. Andrew thyme or the other one. Carol not here, or she would say the St. Elizabeth thyme. So you swear by your thyme, and you know your thyme based on its aroma, the taste, and you know everything. So if you go to the market and they're trying to sell you the wrong thyme, you say, no, that is not St. Andrew thyme, I don't want it. Because it makes the food have a distinctive taste, yes? Exactly. So, so what relevance is thyme and pimento? To intellectual property. You never get it right this time. There's a village in Jamaica by the name of Walker's Wood. You soon hear what the answer is. Just hold on. Walker's Wood in what is referred to as the Garden Parish of Jamaica. Which is our Garden Parish? Exactly. And in that village, they grow and produce a number of products, with perhaps the most famous being, which you heard yesterday, Walker's Wood jerk seasoning. Okay, here we have an example of the use of traditional knowledge and genetic resources, a subject that is being focused on. Dimitra can tell you more about that, at the World Intellectual Property Organization Intergovernmental Committee on Traditional Knowledge, Traditional Cultural Expressions, and Genetic Resources. I need some water, 1 sec. So you get to know running commentary, all right. All right, so what we have done in Jamaica is we have combined to produce a product that is easily distributed. So when you consider, how many of us in here have ever seen the traditional way of jerking? Can I have a show of hands? Fine. So you know that is an extremely long and laborious process. You actually dig a pit and you line it with pimento wood, and then you put the meat and you line it. So it's a long process. No, all you have to do, open a jar, you have your jerk seasoning. Okay, so we moved that traditional way of jerking into a product and a commodity that is now available. And you should have gotten some, the delegates should have gotten some of your packages. All right, so now you can make your own jerk without having to dig a pit. But what legal infrastructure covers that? Well, my colleague at the back suggested trademarks, but that's just the labeling. The critical thing is the geographical indications protection. And in the case of Walker's Wood, they have trademark protection, and we're at the stage where our jerk will soon be protected as a geographical indication. So this is utilizing our own creativity. So now you're thinking, geographical indication, what's that all about? But if you've ever been married or had a special function, you wanted to have champagne, right? Now, you might not have been able to afford champagne for everybody. So what you do is you save the champagne for the head table, and you serve the rest of the people white sparkling wine. So when you're choosing your champagne, you're still going for your trademark, because you don't want every champagne. You want the top of the line champagne, yes? Because you're only serving the bride, the groom, and the attendants. The rest of your crowd, you might be able to afford the champagne, so you give them white sparkling wine. But they're not sure, because if you're not a real connoisseur, you won't know the difference. Okay, so we have champagne, which is a GI. Closer to Jamaica, we have in Mexico a GI that you also drink. Yes, we got tequila. Okay, so now listen to this description of tequila. Tequila is intertwined with many aspects of Mexican culture, from the oldest traditions of mezcal production to modern national pride, from mariachis to the bars of Cancun. It is the icon of Mexico, that one symbol that says Mexico everywhere in the world without any more words needed. It has become the emblem of Mexico, a flag that is celebrated worldwide. That statement from the article, Tequila Culture in Mexico, is perhaps the most succinct way to describe a geographical indication. So now I want you to compare that definition to the following one. A geographical indication is a sign used on goods that have a specific geographical origin and possess qualities, a reputation, or characteristics that are essentially attributable to that place of origin. Most commonly, a geographical indication includes the name of the place of origin of the goods. For example, agricultural products typically have qualities that derive from their place of production and are influenced by specific local factors such as climate and soil, okay? A much more forensic definition, but does it capture the imagination or paint a word picture that transforms you and moves you from your seat here at the UA Regional Headquarters to the bars of Cancun in Mexico? Which one did it? Were you indulging or watching people drinking tequila? So as pointed out yesterday by the guest speaker, we need to move from products to services to experience. So we can't just be selling yam. We have to be selling a GI yam, okay? So people will buy a GI yam rather than just buying an ordinary yam. So in Jamaica, we have the Protection of Geographical Indications Act, which allows for producers of GIs to register them. And it also recognizes products with the potential to be GIs and prevents the false and misleading registration of same. All right, now back to Vision 2030 and its recognition of the creative industries and the role of IP in the process. Our creative industries, manufacturing, mining and quarrying, construction, information and communication technology, tourism and sport. But what's the one key thing underpinning all of these endeavors in seeking to have an international competitive industry sector is the creativity. It's a human factor. It's our innate and some would say God-given ability to convert the ordinary into the extraordinary. We demonstrate our culture and creativity in all aspects of life. Whether, and if anybody in Jamaica has ever had building done, you know the rituals that take place. And if you're from a Christian tradition and you're trying to get them not to do it, you're kind of dark. Because when you leave home, they are going to kill the chicken, they are going to spill the blood, and they're going to pour the white rum. Wrong or right? Exactly. So we just say, okay, fine, you don't want me to do it, no problem. When you're gone, I will deal with it. Okay, so when we're constructing a building or knowing when to plant or pick based on the phases on the moon, and if any of you in here have ever been to the Jamaica Conference Center, the bamboo that is used in the conference center, that bamboo was used, and that bamboo lasted because they went to the persons in the area and found out from them when was the correct time to pick the bamboo. Because if you don't, it will just crumble and disintegrate. So it comes back to using the higher levels of intellect, okay? Which we sometimes ignore. So we know when to plant or pick based on the phases on the moon, and we use the messages from our environment to determine when, where, and how certain activities should take place. The plan states on the national outcome number 1, a healthy and stable population, and recognition is given for the need to improve the quality of life of our population, with special mention being made of the elderly and persons with disabilities. Here we recognize our inventors who have provided us with Counsel and Asmosol from our own genetic resource. Anybody know what that genetic resource is? Don't be afraid, you can say it. Marijuana. And before all of this great debate took place about the legalizing, I must share this because, I'll give a disclaimer here now, I've never smoked it and I've never used it. But I was an extremely strong advocate when we were designating our geographical indications. I kept saying, we have to put the cannabis on the list. And everybody was like, no, you can't. And I'm like, yes, we can, because we wouldn't have had Counsel and Asmosol if those researchers did not get the necessary permission to utilize the marijuana to come up with the Counsel and the Asmosol. In the same way, we could put it on the list, even though it is a illegal substance, but we can put it on the list as a designated GI because we're going to be using it in a controlled way. So we have our cannabis on our GI list. So thank you, which is very good. Okay, so basically we recognize, and you see, it's looking at it from a different point of view. It's really not following, okay, you're supposed to walk down the path, but if you walk down the path, you're going to get the same result. So what you need to do is to see how you can use that path to get the result you want. So I don't buy into the lie that we don't have the laws and the policies in place. To me, we have the laws and the policies in place. What we don't have is a population that is looking at the laws and the policies and using them to our advantage. I'm not going to bore you, but I'm just going to, this is the last thing and before Ewan pulls me down. But I'm just going to articulate all of the laws that we have in place now in terms of intellectual property and laws related to intellectual property. So we've got the Constitution of Jamaica, which you can't leave out. Our main intellectual property laws, we have the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office Act, under which JIPO was established. We have our Trademarks Act, which allows for protection for 10 years that is renewable indefinitely. And I'll tell you, on our trademark register, we actually have a trademark that has been registered continuously from the 1800s. Anybody want to guess what that trademark is? It's a word mark. It's something we all love, and it comes from one of our potential GIs. Women like it especially, and on Valentine's Day, people are going to be exchanging it. Chocolate, thank you, darling. Yes. You win the prize. I don't have any chocolate to give you, though. I'm sorry. Yeah, so Cadbury has a word mark, and they've had that word mark on the books forever. So once you renew it, your trademark is there forever. And if you want advice, you can go to the private bar, or you can come to our office, and we'll give you information on our Trademarks Act, and all of our other IP laws. We also have a Copyright Act, and I must mention here, in terms of our Copyright Act and exceptions, which we mentioned earlier, before WIPO was looking at making an amendment to the copyright regime to allow for, and this is for the purposes of archiving, and for persons with disabilities, whether visual or you're not able to hold material, for you to be able to access it, Jamaica put in steps in our Copyright Act to amend our Copyright Act to allow those persons greater access than the regular population, which we also alluded to in our Vision 2030 when it spoke to recognition of persons with disabilities and putting in necessary steps in place. So we did that, and our executive director was actually there in Marrakesh when that treaty was signed. We have a Designs Act, and we had an authentic design competition last year. And from that authentic design competition, what we wanted were persons to enter who utilized Jamaican materials and produced authentic Jamaican goods. So that folder, which I showed you earlier, this is one example of authentic Jamaican design. And there are several other examples of authentic Jamaican designs. If you go into the shopping hub, all the products, the majority of the products in there are authentic Jamaican products, and I would encourage you to support our local industries rather than to go to the mall and buy things that are imported, okay? Thank you. Cool. Yes. Oh, Ewan is telling me to shut up and come down. Okay, one other thing I need to mention before I go down, because yesterday when they were speaking about the downloading and saying that everybody did it, so I said, no, I didn't do it. And somebody looked at me like, yeah, Lilyclaire, I might steal and do other things, but when it comes to my IP, I am rabid. And it is a standing joke among my family and friends. If I'm coming to visit, they're like, Lilyclaire is coming. So there's a mad scurry to make sure there's nothing in there that I'm going to say, where you get that from? That's illegal. I'm going to report it to OCID, which is the Organized Crime Investigation Division. Because as I said to people, in the same way, you wouldn't want someone to take something from you. Why do you steal other people's creations? Anyway, that's it. I'm gone. Bye.
Thank you, Lilyclaire. Of course, she said she never finished. But I'm sure she will have an opportunity to expand and expound when we get to the question and answer section, which is after our third speaker. So please hold your questions, note them, note your comments, because we're getting back to it. Our second speaker is Senior Program Officer at WIPO. He told me that I should use the shortened version of his name, since he doesn't believe I can actually pronounce the entire length of his first name. He did tell me, but I will take his instruction and not bother to try. So let's call him Mani, not Money for short. Mani Amasi. Is that right, sir? More or less. I'll take more, not less. So, Mr. Manisekaran Amasi started his career in WIPO as a consultant with the Copyright Law Division in 2007. I don't know why these people write this name so many times, though, so I have to say it. Mani graduated from the University of Malaysia in 1978. He had served in many senior positions with the Malaysian government, including as Director of the Copyright Division in the Intellectual Property Corporation of Malaysia, before joining WIPO. He took active part in the several amendments to the Copyright Act in Malaysia, and also served as Secretary to the Copyright Tribunal, where he was in charge of handling issues pertaining to collective management organizations in Malaysia. He has also served as advisor to several government agencies on matters of copyright. In 2005, WIPO appointed him as National Consultant for Malaysia to compile manuals, guidelines, and directories in the area of intellectual property portfolio management. He also facilitated the WIPO study on the economic contribution of copyright-based industries in Malaysia in 2006. Today, he works as Senior Program Officer with the Copyright Infrastructure Division culture and creative industries sector of WIPO and is responsible for the development of collective management organizations. Clearly, to speak about intellectual property in the context of money, ladies and gentlemen, Mani.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor and a rare privilege to be in Jamaica. Now, it is most unfortunate that I'm sandwiched between lawyers. And one is a prosecution lawyer, the other one is a defense lawyer, and the moderator here seems to be playing the role of a learned judge. Then what am I? Looks like I'm a pirate from the Caribbean, defenseless. Now, I would like to thank two important persons who have made it possible for me to come here. One is, of course, my dear friend, a family friend, Carol Simpson, who invited me to come to this country in the year 2001, October, when we met in Washington. It takes about 13 years to honor an invitation from a lady. And she's a very intimate friend of mine, of course with exceptions and limitations. This is because every time she's on Skype, my wife is also there beside me. You know, you must understand wives. But nobody can understand wives. We keep on studying them. And trying to study our wives is a lifelong process. Those who are married would know this. Thank you for the invitation. And the other person is, of course, my dear family friend, whom I had known even before joining WIPO, and that is Mr. Dimitar Ganchev, who is known to my daughters, my wife, and my entire family. That's how I ended up in WIPO. And at least I had a friend before joining WIPO. And before joining WIPO, he made it possible for me to start off study on the creative industries in Malaysia. So thank you very much to both of you. Let me say what I'm supposed to say in conclusion now itself. If at all there is any country I would like to visit again and again, it is Jamaica. Now, the conference has been very lively. I see that this is the first time I am seeing more questions than answers. The participation is so active that we are kept on our toes. Thank you very much. Trinidad has also invited me. Wait for another 13 years. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when I was speaking to Mr. Dimitar, I told him that I can't be speaking about existing legislations in this country because I'm not aware of the legislations here, but I had wanted to take the copyright angle and address on that issue. This is because policies and strategies are based on what is provided by international conventions. The international treaties and conventions do not provide laws themselves. They provide general kind of principles which are borrowed heavily by national legislations. Therefore, we are here in the next half an hour or so to revisit what has been established in the copyright regime. So it is a kind of revision and yet a reminder. Where do I point this to, moderator? Where do I? Where? Upstairs, okay. All right. Now, I have to change my glasses, it's not too clear. But creative industries is very well described by various communities, but this is about the best we can have. You see that cultural industries, which is defined as industries that produce tangible or intangible artistic and creative outputs and have a potential for wealth creation and income generation. And these creative industries are sometimes called copyright-based industries. Now, probably because of that phrase, copyright-based industries, that I'm standing here to address on the copyright angle. And you can see the areas the area of economic activities, which include advertising, architecture, crafts and design furniture, fashion clothing, film, video, and other audiovisual products. You can read on and on and on. At the end of the day, you'll realize that these are nothing but directly linked to the copyright regime, works which are protected. Now let us then revisit what is stated in Article 2 of the Berne Convention, which is expression of literary and artistic works shall include every production in the literary, scientific, and artistic domain, whatever may be the mode or form of its expression, such as what? Again, the works are books, pamphlets, and other writings, lectures, addresses, sermons, and other works of the same nature, dramatic or dramatical musical works, choreographic works, and entertainments in drum show, you can see. You know what is Article 2 of the Berne Convention. Therefore, it is open-ended. There is no beginning, no end, whatever may be the manner of expression. The idea is not protected, you know, but the expression is. Now, the expression is what is makes copyright become active. Now, creative industries, again, you may know that WIPO's initiative in the creative industries are coming in the form of seminars, surveys, and publications of the surveys, and they have helped make governments more aware of the value of the creative industries and intellectual property to the global economy. Now, I think I must say this, it's not the old psychology of I scratching your back or you scratching my back, but I must say, in all honesty, that Demeter has done a wonderful job and made WIPO proud. I stand by my statement. Demeter has made WIPO very proud through the number of studies that have been conducted throughout the world, in many countries. The requests are far more than what he can deliver. Now, why I'm saying this is because I first attended a conference that was organized in the publishing industry in Vietnam in 2005. Immediately after this seminar, the Vietnamese government straight away wanted to capitalize on the copyright-based industries and immediately asked for a study to be conducted. Now, what is the case in Malaysia? In Malaysia, we started the survey in the year 2006, and we were completely blind before that. The moment the study was completed by one Vijayakumari Ganapati, it opened the eyes of those in Southeast Asia. Other countries also wanted to conduct similar studies. Why? Because never before had my country, I'm talking about Malaysia, my country was able to fathom the depth of the contributions by the copyright-based industries. Therefore, the study was conducted, and that was very well received, and it opened the eyes of the policymakers, of the stakeholders, even on the common man on the road, last man on the road. They realized that this was all along an untapped source of information. Now, in 2009, again, Mr. Demeter and I went for another seminar on the film industry, 2009, November. The minister came to give an opening speech, and Mr. Demeter gave his introduction. Then there was a short question and answer session during the press conference time. The minister was so impressed that he called for a half an hour meeting. We went, and the half an hour lasted for 2 hours. And what was the product of that? The following year, the government came out with a national plan. National planning, I don't know whether you have. The government gave 10 million allocation for developing the creative industries. It was called creative economy. Therefore, if it can be successful in one part of the world, it can be successful in other parts of the world. And I think the time has come for all of us to wake up. This is a wake-up call. The studies are wake-up calls. So that is a case in Malaysia, and the government of Malaysia has also come out with what you call a blueprint and a national policy and strategy based on the copyright-based industries, studies on the copyright-based industries and the conventions. And the country is doing fairly well in this area. Now, WIPOs, just to recapitulate, you all know this, WIPO's copyright model for creative industries comes out in the three areas: core, independent, and partial copyright industries. Then you have under copyright, core copyright industries, the advertising, collecting society, film and video, music, performing arts, publishing, software, TV and radio, visual and graphic arts. And independent copyright industries cover blank recording material, consumer electronics, musical instruments, paper, photocopiers, and photographic equipment. The partial copyright industries cover architecture, clothing, footwear, design, fashion, household goods, and toys. What am I trying to say? None of us seated here would avoid any part of them, any one of them. By and large, almost all or most of them are directly involved in our personal and daily lives. So the creative industry is nothing but our own breath. We breathe in and breathe out the creative industries, consciously or unconsciously. Again, what are the elements of creative works protected by copyright? Creative content such as written material, photographs, art, graphic and music and videos, slogans and sounds, website design, software to create digital advertisements such as computer-generated imagery, and creativity in creative industries. This is important. I will tell you a story after this. Now, I better tell the story now itself. You know, we are all endowed with talents and faculties. Mr. Norman, you know what I'm saying. We are all endowed with talents and faculties. The only thing is we don't realize. Now, we are all born with creativity. We don't realize until somebody points it to us. I realized that I was creative after joining WIPO. But then the wake-up call came when I was 8 years old. We were told to draw what we call imaginative composition. Do you know that? You are given 45 minutes and you draw. And by the end of 45 minutes, the teacher will come and collect the art paper that was given to you with coloring and all that. So everybody was struggling. I completed the whole thing within 1.5 minutes. The teacher came and asked me, have you finished? What did I do? I just drew black, painted black, and put 2 dots, white dots, finish. The teacher came and the teacher saw everybody struggling, and I was smiling to myself. I was just relaxing. He came and asked me, have you finished? Yes, what is that? This is this. He asked me, he said, stand up. I stood up. He gave me a slap. Until now, I can feel the pain. So, he asked me, what is this? Teacher, I will explain. This is midnight. In midnight, a male buffalo and a female buffalo are meeting to mate. They are mating. So what you see in a buffalo, buffalo is black like me, right? And what else? Only the eyes are sparkling. So from the side elevation, you see left eye here and right eye there. This is what I drew. But the damage is already done. So that is the day he killed my spirit. And after that, you don't see another Picasso rising up. Now, Picasso's art is the most confusing. Nobody understands what he draws, and yet they pay millions. Is it a warning to stop? Okay, thank you. So creativity is there in all of us. But please don't slap anybody. Not me, at least. So I'm just trying to say that you should be able to detect where your strength is. Use the strength and cultivate. When you focus on that area, then your talent will develop 10-folds or 100-folds. Now this is creativity in my understanding. Now the work must be independently created by author, as opposed to be copied from others, and possess at least some minimal degree of creativity. The minimal creativity, for example, is like drawing 2 elephants meeting at night with 2 dots, and you get a slap for that. That is one. And the original and creative expression in advertisement is also protected. It may be classified under copyright law or literary work. It can be text, it can be musical work, or sound recording, jingles and pictorial, graphic or sculptural work. Now, what I'm trying to say is this. It must be original in creation, from your own mind, from your own imagination, and you express it whatever way you want. It can be in the form of a poem, it can be in the form of a song, it can be in the form of drawing, whatever form it can. It is not the idea, but the expression of the idea that is more important. Right. And then you must also understand that when a work is created, it doesn't last forever and ever. There is a protection period, but during the protection period, you have certain rights, which means the creator is the only one who can exercise the rights, the right of reproduction. That means you produce something and you can reproduce it in any manner or form. Distribution right, especially for cinematographic works, films, rights of public performance, broadcasting, communication to the public, public recitation, right of translation, right of adaptation, arrangement and other alteration, resale right. Resale right is only in certain countries, it's left to the national legislation, and right to protect the works of anonymous and pseudonym works. This can be found in Article 15 of the Berne Convention. Impliedly refers to traditional cultural expression. Therefore, this Berne Convention allows for works for which you can identify the author, and also for works for which you do not know who is the author. So every work, whether the author is alive or not, whether the author is known or not, is protected. So these are the things you must be very clear in devising your national laws and legislations, that if at all there is an author or creator, he has to be respected, and he is respected through the exclusive rights that he holds. And moral rights. The moral rights, there are two kinds of rights you must understand. One is the economic right. The economic right lasts from the day it is created until the expiry date. This is something that you must understand. When I say expiry, it's a protection period. Generally, Berne Convention talks about life of the author and 50 years after death. But again, this is minimum standard. It is left to the national legislations to decide what is the maximum is left. But minimum must be adhered to. This is what the Berne Convention says. So that is the protection period. Beyond that, it falls into public domain. Copyright no more subsists after that. Copyright subsists upon creation. The moment you create, it subsists. You don't have to sign in for registration. There is no mandatory registration for copyright works. Then, but then there is a moral right. The moral right starts off together with the economic right, but the period of protection again is limitless. This is again left to the national conventions, national legislation. In some countries, they are not in the Copyright Act, but in other acts. But in most of the countries, they are in the Copyright Act itself. So there may not be limitations, is left to the country. But remember, the moral right is always in the author, human element, in the human being. But the economic right may last, or may be with an individual, otherwise a company. The owner need not be the holder of the moral rights. Moral rights is with the author, even if the rights are transferred or assigned to another person. That is it. Now, it comes in two forms, right of paternity and right of integrity. What is right of paternity? The work shall always be associated with the author, even after the protection period, even after generations have passed. That is important. For example, I'll give you an example. Do you know Romeo and Juliet? Who is the author of Romeo and Juliet? William Shakespeare. Okay, there is no change in that. Nobody is going to change. If somebody says Romeo and Juliet was written by, say, Amasi, my name is Mani Amasi. If it's written by Mani Amasi, then something is wrong with the moderator or myself. Then who becomes the court of law? Members of the public become the court of law. And then this can be invoked, this element in the Berne Convention can be invoked and say, no, he's telling lie. Number two, you know the ending of Romeo and Juliet. What happens? They die. But the modern versions, have you seen Hindi movies? Yeah, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. Remember, if it is Hindi movies, I wouldn't say that. Hindi movies always go for happy ending. If somebody takes a movie of Romeo and Juliet and show the end as Romeo and Juliet getting married in a church and living happily thereafter, producing dozens of children, what is that? This is distortion and mutilation of the work, which is not allowed under moral rights. So, right of paternity. Now, it is also heartening to know that the performers are given moral rights first time in the WPPT and now under the Beijing Treaty, which is further in the cap. Got scared a bit. So, I need water anyway. So there is no mutilation, there is no distortion. But an international issue has come up, Facebook. An international issue has come up, and that international issue is this. Do you know technology is an asset, at the same time a liability? What is an asset? You take old movies, you colorize them. You add color through technology. It's an asset, certainly. You know, remember Casablanca, the movie? It has come out in color. And any old-timers of Hindi movies here? Mughal-e-Azam? Chori Chori? I'm asking the right question in the wrong country. Okay, have you seen, no, I'm very honest. All of you look like my race, Indians. You know, maybe I'm colorblind or color conscious. You look very much like me. I look very much like you. Somebody asked me, are you from St. Kitts? Yes, I'm from Antigua, I said yesterday. So I'm very much accepted in this area. Now, you see, colorizing is it is an asset. Now, what is a liability? The movie was not created originally in that color. It was black and white and gray. They are being sued as distortion. Because, do you know that it is very difficult to take movies with color black and white? Only two shades, black and white. The cameraman has to focus very well, and the screenplay has to be written very carefully for that. But you take a camera and just shoot into a jungle, you have an array of colors coming out. It's beautiful. It's easy to shoot in colors, but to shoot movies in black and white, it is really difficult. So it's an asset at the same time a liability. So this is another area we have to pay attention to. And duration, you know, I've already spoken, 50 life plus 50 for authors. And then the term of protection has been extended. Example for performers was 20 years in Rome and 50 years under TRIPS. And phonograms, producer phonograms extended from 20 years in Rome to 50 years. So don't visit the old conventions, go to the latest updates in devising policies and see that you're a member of those conventions for you to invoke those. And now internet, very quickly, internet, they feel that whatever is available in the internet is free for all because they feel that is public domain. Public domain because members of the public have access, so therefore it's public domain. Wrongly understood, you know. But remember, we have a lot of PhD doctors these days. Cut and paste PhD, right? My daughter did masters in Turin University, and they were told very clearly, you don't cut and paste. We have technology to capture the site that you have visited. So they have to write down the whole thesis by their own hand and type it out. So this is important. Don't assume that you can copy everything because even in internet, you have protection. WCT and WPPT makes it very clear against circumvention. So rule of the thumb is there. You can go through the slides, okay? And public domain is not a solution. And I've also mentioned that Mona Lisa is there in public domain, all right. That may not be protected. But if somebody takes a photograph of Mona Lisa, that has got a new protection. So you have to be careful about that. Now, strategies to protect, these are in the slides. When using contents belonging to others, make sure that they are respected. And points to remember, copyright works always have authors. Number one, authors always have exclusive rights. And rights have to be respected. Get prior permission before using their works. Written consent is most preferable. Now, I don't know whether I've caused justice to my talk, but I remember one thing, and that is, a member of parliament was winning all the elections that he contested. A personal friend of mine, he won about 8 elections. He was already old 60s when I met him. I asked him, how did you win all the elections? He said, simple. When he addressed public rallies, speak in a language that nobody understands. When nobody understands, you are sure to win with thumping majority. But the moment they understand what you are speaking, you will lose deposit, he said. So, I think you have laughed, which means you have understood. But don't let me lose my deposit in this country. I love your country. Thank you.
Thank you, Manny. All right. We're progressing quickly because I know we want to get to question and answers. I know we want to have the conversation that Lilyclaire insisted on us having at the beginning. So let's introduce our third speaker, Andrea Scarlett-Lozer, my classmate and friend. Associate Myers, Fletcher, and Gordon. You see, I don't want to preempt me. Hold on. Listen, I had a conversation with a young lady, and the context is important. Effective March 1, partner, Myers, Fletcher, and Gordon. Give her a round of applause. A distinguished attorney at law called to the bar in Jamaica in 2004, of course, currently at Myers, Fletcher, and Gordon, one of the largest and most reputable law firms serving local and international investors in Jamaica. She has a sound working knowledge of business and finance issues and is a leading practitioner in intellectual property, and also specializes in sports and entertainment, corporate finance, employment and labor relations, and many more. Andrea is an accomplished writer and trainer. She has published over 50 legal articles and papers in international journals, the Daily Observer, the Myers, Fletcher and Gordon newsletter, presentations and workshops to various businesses and corporate audiences. Since 2008, she has been tutoring landlord and tenant law at the Norman Manley Law School. She was also coached by me in football. Successfully coached by me in football. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrea Scarlett-Lozer.
Good morning. Thanks. Ewan, thank you for the kind introduction. I actually have the pleasure of teaching my 3 sons to play football because you didn't coach my husband. But it's a legacy that will live on. And please consider all protocols observed. It's a great honor to be here. Of course, as you notice, the panel is very distinguished, and I'm happy to be one of them. Thankfully, Manny gave you quite a mouthful, or a bellyful, as we would say in Jamaica, in terms of jokes, because he gave me something to reflect on. He knows who killed his creativity. I'm gonna have to reflect to see who killed mine, because he said that everybody has it innately, but I'm not sure that I do. But I have to commend WIPO and WIPO on the work that they've been doing in terms of promoting intellectual property and helping with the development of related industries in Jamaica. I have been associated with their work since 2004, and it's a journey where you can definitely see developments and mileposts along the way. A very hardworking team, and I publicly want to congratulate them. You'll notice from my presentation that I suspect the panel was carefully picked. I didn't know what the other presenters were going to talk about, but having listened to them, I realized that everybody is coming from a different angle. Lily came from the perspective of policies, Mani came from the international perspective, and I believe that what you will see in my presentation is that I'm coming from the perspective of a commercial law practitioner, and I will focus a lot on how intellectual property, the industries and the laws actually interact with other laws that would affect the business of creativity, if we can call it that. I start by referring to the work of John Hawkins. Very happy to have him at this conference. And in his well-acclaimed book, he indicated what the key rules for success would be if you want to monetize creativity. He said, invent yourself, be unique, own your ideas, understand what copyright, patents, and IP laws are, treat the virtual as real and vice versa, learn endlessly, borrow, reinvent, and recycle, and know when to break the rules. I was very impressed with his work, as have been many other people, and I'd like for you to note this quote. People with ideas, people who own ideas, have become more powerful than people who work machines, and in many cases more powerful than the people who own machines. Yet the relationship between creativity and economics remains almost invisible. And I think that's really the crux of what we are talking about here today. But of course, there have been developments along the way. As of 2006, the UK Department of Culture, Media and Sport recognized 12 creative sectors. So we're really getting to a place where we're identifying creative industries as legitimate industries, and we're applying thoughts, economic thoughts to it. The sectors identified are advertising, architecture, arts and antique markets, craft, design of fashion, film, video and photography, software, computer games and electronic publishing, music and the visual and performing arts, publishing, television, radio. And other commentators have suggested that toys and games, gastronomy, research and development should be added to the list of creative sectors. So from this list, you would have noticed that the creative industries are really the things that we define modern economy and modern society by. So these things underpin, unlike the industrial era, when we thought of factories and machinery and so on. Nowadays, we talk about computers, toys and games. Research and development is heavily invested in and reap great rewards. In June 2012, the Prime Minister, or Honorable Portia Simpson-Miller, in her contribution to the 2012-2013 budget debate, announced that a National Commission on Cultural and Creative Industries will be established. And she indicated that this process recognizes that cultural and creative industries span sectors administered by 9 ministries of government. So again, it underscores the point that the creative industries really underpin a lot of economic activity and needs to be given serious attention. So where is Jamaica in terms of its performance? Have we been gathering the data, and how are we performing in terms of generating income and contributing to GDP from our creative industries? I'm I refer to an article written by Darren Luton in the Gleaner, published on November 28, 2013. And in this article, it was indicated that in 2013, creative industries generated $267 million in local capital expenditure in the 2012 to 2013 financial year, according to JAMPRO. And JAMPRO has consistently pointed out that it was able to facilitate approximately $1.2 billion worth of capital expenditure from creative industries only in the space of 1 year. It was indicated that in that time period, 5,392 temporary jobs and 45 permanent jobs were created. So some 70 of these temporary jobs were created when the US reality television show, American Next Top Model, was shot in Western Jamaica. And of course, we thought that these were exciting times for Jamaica, and we're selling more than sun, sand, sea, and sugar. Thank you. I'll not tell you where Ewan's imagination went with that, but we'll move on. So clearly, the message is being taken on by policymakers, by persons who control national resources, that the creative industries are absolutely important and critical to national development. And we fancy ourselves as being a very cultural and creative people, and sometimes we think that this revolution, if we want to call it that, is happening only in Jamaica. But that's actually not the case. There's actually an international movement towards recognizing the creative industries for the value that they can contribute to developing economies. I refer to the Inter-American Development Bank website, which reports that the Organization of American States and the Inter-American Development Bank and the British Council jointly commissioned a report. It was a first of its kind, and to show the important contribution to growth, jobs, and trade in the hemisphere generated by creative and cultural activities such as the arts, design, music, advertising, among others. In this report, it was indicated that some 640 billion of the world's exports came from creative industries, of which 87 billion, or 14%, originated in the Americas, which would include us. The economic impact of the creative industries in the Americas collated existing quantitative data on the economic performance of what was the creative and cultural industries, and the sectors examined were the same ones I mentioned as being included in the UK list of creative sectors. This study found that the contribution by creative industries to GDP varied widely across the region, from just under 2% in Chile to more than 10% in Brazil and the United States. Growth rates in the sector are consistently higher than the average of the economy, and we definitely need that in Jamaica. No more 0.02% growth, hopefully. The creative sector is also an important provider of employment in some countries. Between 5% to 11% of the jobs in Canada, Colombia, Mexico, and Trinidad and Tobago. Do we have any delegates from Trinidad? Welcome. Moreover, the sector has a higher percentage of youth employment than the rest of the economy. That's where the youths want to be employed. That's the Jeep we need. Thank you for that chuckle. The sector is becoming increasingly international. Creative exports from countries in the Americas accounted for 2.2% of all their exports of goods and services. And the leading creative sectors for the Americas, again, which includes us, are design goods, personal, cultural, and recreational services, architecture and related services, visual arts goods. So again, if we want to look at what are the opportunities in terms of international trade, these kinds of studies should be helpful in helping us to identify trends and economies and opportunities. So we have the local situation, which shows that there is a lot of room for growth. And there is also the international situation, which shows that the creative industries is poised for tremendous growth. So what have we done in terms of creating a legal infrastructure in Jamaica? A lot of times when we're having a discussion on the legal infrastructure and we're in a creative industries or intellectual property setting, we focus on our IP laws. But creative industries cannot blossom only if we have good IP laws. They need to have a good business environment within which to thrive. So what happens if an author creates his work and then at the end of the day he has to pay exorbitant taxes? Or what happens if in order to create a work the raw materials are heavily taxed, or there is a difficulty in terms of setting up business and establishing trade with the persons who need to consume the goods that have been created? I'm going to give you a brief insight in terms of the kinds of laws that we have in Jamaica that would affect doing business in the creative sectors or industries. Taxation laws. Businesses and individuals operating in the creative industries are, unless specifically exempted, subject to the full suite of taxes payable. There is GCT, which is a tax on goods and services under the General Consumption Tax Act, now at 16.5%. There is income tax, which is a tax on income, and there is definitely increased focus on ensuring that persons in the creative industries pay their income tax. There is stamp duty, which is payable on documents and imports. Transfer tax, payable on a transfer of real estate, shares, and other forms of securities. Customs duties, payable on imports of foreign-made goods and raw materials. And then, when we think of the tax burden, the next question is, what are the tax incentives? Recently, several pieces of legislation which granted industry-specific incentives were repealed, and this included the Motion Picture Industry Encouragement Act. For many years, various sectors of the creative industries lobbied for similar incentive regimes to include tax breaks on customs duties and income tax. As a substitute, and of course to comply with IMF requirements, Parliament passed a suite of legislation intended to level the playing field for all industries in terms of applications for and granting incentives. So based on this, what is now called the Omnibus Incentive Regime, tax incentives and allowances are generally granted on the basis of the nature of the economic activity rather than the industry in which it is carried on in. Therefore, the creative industries are neither prejudiced nor given special treatment under this regime. And the new pieces of legislation include the income tax relief. So relief is given for large-scale projects and pioneer industries. The Fiscal Incentives Miscellaneous Provisions Act, which basically repealed all or most of the prior incentive legislation, customs tariff resolution, and stamp duty amendments. Additionally, and I think this is noteworthy for our creative sectors, under the Income Tax Act, there is a new system of employment tax credits, and this allows employers to deduct from their taxable income up to 30% of the value of their income tax. This deduction represents a total of the statutory payroll levies, which include NHT, NIS, education, and HART contributions. Noteworthy as well is the fact that there are now capital allowances in respect of intellectual property and research and development. So there's, in this respect, specific attention is being given to what would be considered the creative industries. And I believe that this latter development in terms of allowing capital allowances for IP and research and development will encourage businesses to start placing an accounting value on the IP invested or developed in their business. And this should increase the extent to which IP is captured in our formal economy, and also the extent to which their values are recognized in various types of transactions. Now, in terms of doing business in the creative sectors, these businesses also need to comply with regulations that require licensing. So not because you're in the creative industry, you don't just go and set up shop and keep going. There are various licensing laws which need to be complied with, which include the Town and Country Planning Act, Spirit License Act for selling or offering liquor to the public or in public places, corporate registration under the Companies Act or the Business Names Registration Act, Public Health Act, licenses on trade and business, and of course professional licenses if you're in fields such as architecture. And this is a hot button for this conference, and I know Lilyclaire was making certain intimations. She may not necessarily like my position on where we are in terms of financing, but I will let you know. I'm going to start with a quote from Kevin Jackson. He is an award-winning founder of NIVEC Pro Animation, and animation is a new buzz creative sector in Jamaica. In responding to JAMPRO's much publicized plans to develop a trade in animations using the talents we have in Jamaica, he said that it's a pie in the sky unless it comes with funding support for animators to set up studios and train talent in order to attract projects. Because these projects, he said, usually require established studios. The availability of financing is, of course, a real issue for the creative industries. And of course, everybody, you can give a round of applause for the Security Interest in Personal Property Act, which came into effect on January 2, 2014, and it provides statutory recognition and a statutory framework for the granting of security interest in intellectual property and other kinds of intangibles to a lender. Of course, you could always have done it, but the lenders were far more reluctant, and what this, I'm going to call it the SIP for short, what the SIP does is provide a statutory framework which recognizes it and should give additional comfort to lenders. But I must say that this act does not alter the financial accounting rules and principles that affect how intangibles are to be valued and represented on official accounts. So various valuation considerations will continue to apply, including considerations such as whether the intangible was acquired from a third party or not, how much value was apportioned to the asset in that earlier transaction, whether the asset is identifiable or not, even though it is not manifested in a physical asset. So for example, if you have a pool of creative assets, can you take out a portion? How do you take out a portion of it and say to the bank, this is my security? You have to be able to specifically identify where is the beginning, where is the end of the right interest, which is bundled up in this intangible asset. Determining the value of internally created intangibles continue to be difficult and subjective, and I think that's where lenders will have a problem. For this reason, internally created IP and other intangibles has been and will continue to be less likely to be reported on the balance sheet under international accounting standards. Most accounting standards provide that the intangible assets reported on the balance sheets are only those that have been purchased or created in strictly limited instances. So can you say with me, problems for startups? The statutory framework, and Ewan says I'm finished. Do you want me to take another minute? Thank you. The statutory framework for the creation of security may affect the lender's assessment of the risk associated with the IP. because there's a system of registration which allows the lender to note his or her first interest in the particular IP. But there's one other thing that the Act hasn't changed. It doesn't change the fact that intangibles backed by an identifiable stream of income will form the most acceptable form of security. It doesn't change that, and again, I think we'll have some fundamental problems getting funding for IP. But again, SIP is a move in the right direction. I want to look at trade because, of course, yes. I have 30 seconds, right? Trade is important, and in this context, we're looking at how easy do we allow our players in the creative sector to move between countries so that they can have their services consumed. We look at CARICOM treaties on the free movement of people, and of course, we look at the EU CARIFORUM Economic Partnership Agreement. Harmonization with international treaties. We've signed many, many international treaties. How well have we implemented those treaties locally will affect how easy we're able to do business internationally, or how much we open up our shores to other people. But on the topic of the legal infrastructure for the creative industries, my assessment, basic assessment, is that there is absolutely no doubt that the creative industries are absolutely critical to improving Jamaica's economic performance in the short, medium, and long run. It's also clear that the core IP laws, which Lily mentioned, lack modernity and for the most part do not address many modern legal issues, such as trade secrets, animations, digital and online rights, data privacy, image or personality rights. But we're moving in the right direction, and thanks to the work that WIPO will continue to do, we will indeed get to a better place. Thanks for listening.
That is how you extend an extra minute into an extra 4. All right. So we had allocated 20 minutes for conversation. I know I'm going to be told that it has to be reduced to 15. So let's assume we have 10. All right. We had 3 excellent speakers, and I know you have a lot to say. You have a lot to ask. There is a microphone in the middle of the room from which you're free to ask your questions so that we can all hear. And let's take them quickly. Let's take the questions quickly. Please feel free to field them to any of the panelists. Sure, if we can get the microphone on.
I am just disappointed that in the presentation of the legal infrastructure, the entire IP system was not referred to in terms of not only the legislation, but the rights holder organizations and so on that are necessary to have the entire system operational. And I think they are provided for in the legislation.
Okay, would you like to comment on that? Lilyclaire? No? No? Yeah. Yeah. She's buzzing, you know. Lilyclaire.
No, there was just a comment. Does she want to respond?
I just want to know the reason why there was no reference to.
There's a CMO conference being held on Thursday and Friday. I'm so sorry we didn't mention it in depth. That's why. That's the only reason why I shared.
But how many people know about that CMO conference? And we have a lot of young people here, students here.
It's being held here. It's being held here, and it was sent out.
And it is the whole business of the copyright organizations are critical for the rights holders. to help with the enforcement of their rights. It is critical
I
for
totally
the
agree with
person
you.
have here.
I totally agree with you. And WIPO does have a desk in the business hub in the room, and there are extensive brochures that deal with the subject area of the rights holders. And we're available for questions for anybody. And we all have on our WIPO shirts, so you can come and speak to us, and you can visit our offices, which are open Monday to Friday. And even though we're supposed to close to the public at 3:30, if you come in after, we will deal with you. So you can contact us, and our phone number is 946-1300, 946-0789, and our website is www.jipo.gov.jm, and we're open and available at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lilyclaire.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
All right. Question. When I was overseas, I went to Canada. I see it. The label "Made in Jamaica," even when it's not made in Jamaica. I've been to England. I see it. I've been to America. I've seen it. I'm saying, what is being done to protect? I don't know if it's called Brand Jamaica or whatever it is, but there are several other countries that are exploiting the name Jamaica in order to sell their products. I didn't hear that. I don't know if is there an international law, a regional law, or a local law that address that? That's question one. I have more than one question. I am actually doing a research on the creative sector, so I have some questions. All right.
All right. Can we address first question first?
Okay, all right.
All right.
Okay, in terms of the country name, Jamaica actually has an initiative at the World Intellectual Property Organization, and our trademark and geographical indications and designs manager, which is sitting right there, Mr. Marcus Goff, along with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, we have an initiative at the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is seeking to get a protection of country name. But as you can understand, the name Jamaica has a lot of currency internationally, so persons want to use the name Jamaica. So there's not that much open support from countries in terms of us being allowed, because we're the ones who are suffering primarily. But we're gaining momentum at WIPO, and we're hoping that there will be a treaty amendment which recognizes that the use of country names should not just be done willy-nilly. But in terms of your specific example of products being labeled made in Jamaica and not being made in Jamaica, again, I will speak to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and WIPO. If you see a product that is labeled made in Jamaica and you're sure and you have evidence to support that it is not an authentic Jamaican product, if you get in touch with us, what we do is we work at the level of state to state, and we have interventions, and sometimes the products are removed. So there are things that you can do, because like when I go anywhere, whether I'm on holiday or for work, and I see the products, I take the pictures and I come back home and then I write and I say, I note you had this product and horse-dead cow fat. And when you call somebody on it, usually they will respond in the positive. But if you see it and you just moan about it and don't take it to the next step, then it can be addressed. So those products that you saw, if you get in touch with us and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, we will try and see what we can do to ameliorate that. But if you're doing our research project on creative industries, do like your other colleagues have done. Come into our office and we will help you. All right? Because it's better than to ask questions here. No, because you're not writing down anything.
I actually didn't know, so that's why I have a question.
Excellent. Question 2.
All right, just a quick question. What is WIPO doing in terms of, sometimes when you go to actually interview the creators themselves, they're very suspicious. They think you are some kind of person for the government. I'm saying, what is WIPO doing in that regard in terms of getting the data? Because I think yesterday it was said that partly why the sector, the government is unwilling sometimes to fund or even other investors is because they don't have raw data. So I'm wondering what WIPO is doing in that regard.
Well, that's not our role and function. That is the role of Statin and what it is. And it's Statin working with WIPO. But it comes back to, again, our behavior. And it's not unique to the creative industries. When we have a national census and the census taker comes to your door and says, how many persons live in this house? And you know that there are 50 of you living in the house. And you say to the census taker, just me and my mother. Okay? And then when all of the people crawling out, she's like, no, them don't live here. And it's the same thing. So we are our own worst enemies. We refuse to share the information, and then we are upset when we don't get the assistance. And I don't know if you can recall the last census we did in Jamaica. There were so many appeals to people to please respond to the census taker. I mean, and one way we address the issue, because, well, I don't need to say this because we're in an open crowd. What the census looks at is where you are on a particular day. So when they come to you, you don't have to say, on July 1st, I was at DUA Regional Headquarters. This is where I slept for the night. But on July 10th, I slept somewhere else. They just want to know one specific day, so you don't have to disclose any of your personal business. Because all they're interested in finding out is how many people we have. And it's the same thing with the creative industries. There is a reluctance for people to share, because the same point Andrea made, they assume that you're going to tax them. But if I don't know what you need, I can't help you. So if you're not willing to share.
Thank you. That's okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have, first of all, I want to congratulate the speakers. I have then one little comment and one little question. There was a reference to various types of data, international definitions, and I thought that it might have been confusing since the audience already heard references to other data. My comment is that data should be always taken and considered with a lot of caution, and you should give priority to data which is produced in Jamaica and by you, sticking to your own definitions. That's the only way to be able to track changes and to monitor things in a certain pattern, not just take left and right any kind of data which is published by others on you. That's my comment.
Excellent.
I have a question. The legal infrastructure is, of course, a broader topic than just the national and international laws. And I thought that, of course, you may have the best laws in the world, but those laws need to be enforced. And if you want to have a functioning creative community and healthy creative industries, there has to be a good level of enforcement of these laws. So my question relates to the enforcement capacity which exists in Jamaica. Are the courts able to deal with those cases of copyright infringement which are hurting the creative industries? Do you have the right amount of judges with the right amount of knowledge? Can you provide legal advice to creators from the creative industries which need it when they start up a new enterprise? Could you just go a little bit broader in the legal infrastructure discussion? Thank you.
Thanks for the question and comment. Based on my experience, I've been doing IP since 2004. I don't believe that we have a vibrant culture of accessing legal services for the creative industries. From my own personal experience, I do not get a vibrant, I would say, clientele of local requests for advice. So our international counterparts, they check everything, they make sure that their businesses are properly organized, whether they're in the creative fields or other fields. And additionally, there are not many claims filed which relate to IP rights. So if you should do a survey of the court documents, you will see a disproportionate, for a country which is as creative as we are and which relies so much on creative industries, you'll see a very disproportionate number of claims, and even the nature of the claims are not very sophisticated either. So which is why I mentioned that the work that WIPO is doing is really bringing the message out there to the players in the field that there are laws which support their industries and which can help them to formalize their business, to maximize their earning potential. And you also find that many creative persons, let's call it, or creative businesses, tend to do a lot of informal business arrangements. And so, again, they do not access the legal infrastructure as much as is available.
I believe, thanks Andrea, I believe Lilyclaire has an additional comment.
I would actually just like to recognize the presence of the Organized Crime Investigation Division of the police force, and there are a number of them present here. Probably they don't want to stand up for you to see them, so that you'll know who they are. But the Organized Crime Investigation Division of the Jamaica Constabulary Force has an intellectual property rights enforcement division that is specifically geared towards working on IP crimes. The point Andrea made is really a valid point, but I must say, and our copyright manager, Ms. Marissa Longsworth, can attest to this. What happens is persons who have issues with copyright infringement, they find their way to WIPO because they don't have to pay us. So we give them the advice and we recommend that they go to people like the law firms, but they're like, no miss, I don't want to spend any money. So we prefer to just come in and speak to you. And then there's also the avenue of arbitration and mediation. And we do have a copyright tribunal that deals with some issues. So the point is, it exists, but people aren't, well, you know how it is. If anybody in here has you have a matter where someone in your family has died and there's a will, you say, which lawyer we know again? And you call the attorney to say, how do I go about getting a probate of the will, rather than presenting your body formally in an office to get the will probated, because we do utilize informal channels. But I think as our culture begins to change and we recognize how critical and important intellectual property is, more people will begin to use the formalized services. But I really want to highlight the work of OCID, because they have done a lot of work with us. And we have seized and destroyed a lot of infringing material, and that is primarily from the point of view of OCID.
Wonderful. Yes, ma'am.
My question is to Mrs. Andrea Scarlett-Lozer. It's a follow-up actually to Mrs. Carby, because what was notable for me when you made, and probably you can advise why, when you made your listing of requirements for business, persons going in the creative business, what are the licensing and so forth that is required. Noticeably, the Copyright Act was not there. You had the Town and Country Act and the other various acts. So I'm wondering if, being in as an IP lawyer, if clients are not advised as to all the requirements in the IP Copyright Act, which also is a requirement for licensing by the CMOs.
Thank you. The challenge I faced is that I had limited time. I had a separate point on core IP laws, which would have dealt with that issue that you mentioned, but we didn't have enough time to get into that.
All right. All right, let me just say this, by the way. I know that there are lots of issues that we want to address, and the panelists are available for conversation and engagement for the process of the day, so long as they're here. We're going to go to a coffee break. Let me just get this one question in very quickly, if we can get a quick response to it, and then we can go to a 10-minute coffee break. Is that all right? Yeah. Beautiful. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My question is to Ms. Bellamy. The reggae rhythm can be found in most keyboards today, most electronic keyboards that are sold. My question is whether Jamaica is benefiting from the patent of that rhythm, the reggae rhythm.
I'll use Dr. Cooper's response yesterday to the question about ropes. I'm not aware of it, but I know that the government of Jamaica is actually taking steps. We're actually taking steps to try and protect reggae as an intangible cultural heritage in the same way that Argentina and Uruguay protected tango. So we're actually taking steps towards doing that. I need to speak to you in more detail about that to see what we can do in terms of that. Oh, and then Marissa has pointed out to me that tomorrow will be good for you to be here on that topic. All right? Thank you.
Okay, So we would like to thank our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, help me to thank our panelists, Ms. Lilyclaire Bellamy, Manny, and Andrea for the engagement. Please feel free during the coffee break to have conversations with them. Also, I have been mandated to advise you that the Gleaner is offering free subscriptions in the shopping hub, which is outside the registration area, all day today. Feel free to visit and sign up. You will return in 10 minutes. The Gleaner will tell you all you need to know about these subscriptions, I'm sure. And we return in 10 minutes. Thank you.